Hey everyone, and welcome to what I think is episode 169 of the Custom Apparel Startups podcast. This is Mark Stevenson.
And this is Mark Vila. And today we're going to talk about how to figure out ROI or return on investment when you're looking to purchase some equipment.
Yeah, and we're using that term kind of specifically because that is the term that finance people and bigger business people use to talk about what happens, the money that they make when they invest in equipment. What you may be asking is, how much money am I going to make? How much money am I going to make in my business? If I buy this, how much cash am I going to put in my pocket? How quick can I pay it off? Those are more common terms. How to figure an ROI, that return on investment, is something very specific. We're going to talk about what it is technically, and we are going to review a little bit on what that means for cash flow if you finance it. But most of the time, it's going to be writing a check or investing in a piece of equipment, figuring out how long it takes to pay it back.
Yeah, and this also goes into can I afford this piece of equipment? Kind of that's kind of a concept, especially for particularly, any business cash flow it has to deal with it. And if you're a startup or you're a particularly small business, mom and pop type of a thing, you will look at investing some of your money or bringing on a new payment kind of as another bill. And can I afford to add this bill, or can I afford to take this money out of savings or profits or borrow it, whatever you want to call it. And this can kind of help you comfortably do that math on your own. So you can look at it and then just comfortably say, I clearly can do this, or say there's a risk involved that this is a good idea, or whatever outcome you get based on some good math.
Yeah, and also if you're in a position where you are looking at borrowing money or getting local investors, maybe asking family if they want to invest, or going out to a wider circle of friends, maybe a money guy. You're going to say, hey, I've got this business idea. Here's what I'm going to need to start it. The next thing you're going to say or talk about or write about is going to be, here's the ROI on the money that I'm going to spend. And a big chunk of that is going to be probably your biggest expense when you first get started, is going to be whatever you're going to use to make your custom products.
Yeah. This could get really complicated and convoluted. And when we're talking about investing in stocks and bonds and things of that nature, there's a million more things to talk about. But we're going to break this down for just anybody who's kind of regular out there. You're pretty good at math. You can do some math. You want to try to get an idea, and you are trying to explain this to yourself, your business partner, or like you said, somebody who might be willing to invest, or even a local bank that you might be borrowing from. This will give you a really great educated way to speak about it without having to be any type of financial analyst.
Right. Okay, so Mark, why don't you start it off and talk about just, why should you care and why should you figure out the ROI?
Sure. So, when it comes to business and return on investment, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different ways to discuss it and what does it mean, and there's a lot of terms, but really, it's how much money are you going to spend on something. Right. And we're going to talk about equipment, but this could be advertising dollars. It goes for a lot of different ways. You could do building. This. Yeah. A building. There's a lot of different ways, but we're going to talk about equipment. So how much am I going to invest in this piece of equipment? And then how much will that make me? How much is that going to turn into profit for my business? Right away, over time, how quickly will you ramp up? That's a lot of what we're going to be covering with this.
Yeah, and how long it takes for it to pay for itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll know after that. That's kind of what I think one of the big advantages of writing a check for like a big purchase like that, whether it's digital heat effects or a DTG printer or even one of the direct to film printers that we've got, is if I write this check for $30,000 and I'm going to make $2,500 a month in profit because I own it, then it's going to pay for itself in a year. That means year two, it's all profit. Year three, it's all profit. Year four, it's all profit. So that's another good way to look at what you're looking for ROI is how long is it going to take me to pay back the money that I borrowed or used in order to buy it.
Yeah. And you know what? This is something that a lot of folks listening to this will be familiar with. And if you've ever been pitched it or made the jump to do this, is something with your home, right? Solar or windows are big on their kind of return on investment pitch, right? And what does that mean is that this solar roof, I'm just going to use numbers that are wrong, but $10,000, right? The roof for the windows are going to cost you $10,000 and it's going to save you on your electric bill. Well, how much? Okay, well, it's going to save you $100 a month or $1,200 a year. Somebody looks at that and says, gosh, it's like 8 years before I pay it off. I don't want to do that. Right. And they're not interested compared to $500 and $5,000 and $150 a month. Now that time, okay, well, now it's just in a few years, then my electric bill will be lower for the next 10 years I plan on living here. And I'm going to save $10,000. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade my windows now and start putting that money, getting ready for that money to get back in my pocket. And I think that's what you're talking about there, Mark, is that that initial investment, if you think it's going to take you 5 years to get your return on a piece of equipment, you might not think that's a good investment for your business. It's just way too long to get that money back compared to if you're going to pay it off in a few months.
And I'm just going to throw in one more thing just to make it a little bit more confusing. And that's you want to do your ROI calculation to figure out if that's the best thing that you can do with your money right now. If you're starting a business and you have, $20,000 in the bank and you're buying $18,000 worth of equipment, is that the best use of that money? Okay, let me see. Let's do some math. See how long it'll take me to replenish that bank account. Or, if you've got that 20 grand in a shoebox under your bed versus taking out a home equity loan on your house or partnering up with somebody or borrowing it from somebody, then, all those things, you can't make a good decision until you know your ROI. Mm-hmm. And which is what we should probably get to.
Okay, let's do that then. So maybe, do you want to start to talk about, you mentioned something that I find to be one of the most intriguing things when it comes to ROI, and that's you buy a $10,000 printer. And you paid cash, whatever, however you did it, you're not doing a long-term lease, you're doing something short-term, a credit card or cash. And about how quick till you've paid it back and it's kind of all profit per se.
Yeah. So, I mean, the great thing about, and while a lot of businesses will just write a check for a piece of equipment, is it affects your depreciation. First of all, it's when you can take depreciation for it, et cetera, that you should talk to a tax pro about it. But more importantly, if I buy something for, $20,000 and I'm going to make, and I'm going to pay it off in 2 years, that means that in year 3, everything that I produce with that piece of equipment is going to be profit. In year 4, everything's going to be profit. In year 5, everything is going to be profit. So the idea behind buying a piece of equipment and then looking at your ROI when you get to replenish that money that you took out for it is how quickly you get to a super profitable business. You don't really have to worry about things monthly. Write a check for $10,000, you make $1,000 a month from it. That first 10 months, you put all that money back in the bank, and now you're at zero. Now that equipment is free, except for maintenance and labor. So now everything that you make, every time you sell a shirt, you have a much more clear and easily decipherable profit.
Mm-hmm. I like this. So
that piece of equipment.
Yeah. So this is you've got $20,000 in the bank. from your business, and you decided to take 10 of it and buy a printer or an embroidery machine, and then now you have 10,000 in the bank and an embroidery machine.
Yep.
Then you start making money with the embroidery machine, and you put $1,000 back in the bank. By month 10, you've got your $20,000 back, and you own an embroidery machine. And then by month 20, you've got $30,000 in the bank. And month 40, you've got 40,000, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of it, you may have $100,000 in the bank, and maybe and then the embroidery machine is maybe retiring at that point in time. And so there's kind of the return on that cash that you made as you grew your bank account by taking some cash directly out of it and investing in a piece of equipment. So following this, we'll talk about kind of how you can do some math on those numbers before and after you make the investment.
Yeah, and if you're a finance pro that's listening to this, try not to cringe. We're trying to use, the simplest version of all these calculations and make it clear. And everything that we tell you is useful. We promise it's very useful to go through all this. It may not share the same vocabulary as someone if you're talking to a financial planner or something like that. They may use different words for all these same ideas.
Mm-hmm. And for the finance pros or folks that know about this and are really good with this stuff. So I just Google searched 93% of Americans experience some level of math anxiety. 17% suffer from high level of math anxiety. This is according to Yahoo.
Okay.
But Yahoo Finance.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. So saying that, that's the reason why this is an important episode. So if you're part of the 7%, then we applaud you and we know you've done this. But if you're part of that 17% that has a lot of math anxiety, this episode's clearly for you. And if you're somewhere in the middle there, I think it's only going to help. And I remember Mark and I have had these conversations back and forth about equipment. And I know over the years, I've learned so much just by us having these thinking and talking conversations in a simple mode.
Yeah.
Not in finance pro mode. So where do we step into next? We should start doing some math, I think, unless there's anything else to go before we get into the scary part.
No, why don't you start doing the basic math, and then we'll talk about the difference between what financing ROI looks like.
Okay. All right. So this, again, this is simple. This is almost in your head or pencil math, simple stuff you could do on a calculator. So you've purchased or just a $10,000 printer. Okay. And everything that needs to go in it, you spent about $10,000. And
by the way, we did a great episode on how much things cost.
Oh yeah.
Printer. There's a wide selection of t-shirt printers that you can get from ColDesi for $10,000.
Yeah, there's actually you can get started from anywhere from a couple $1,000, not honestly less than $1,000, all the way up to $50,000, depending on what your production and needs are. But a very common number is about 10-ish thousand. It's the most amount of people are kind of getting in that range. It's a very powerful piece of equipment. It does a lot. It's full commercial, so it's just very common. The payment's affordable, things like that. Digressing. So you've done some math that you can make about $10 a shirt, right?
And we've helped with that because we've surveyed our customers and found that to be a very low reasonable profit. Most of them make a little bit more, but a lot of them make $10.
A lot of them do, right? And are doing and most people over many years of surveying and asking are saying that 10 is a clear number that they do. And some folks in the screen printing business, they're only charging $5 a shirt, right? But that is a different business than we're talking about. We're talking about digital printing. We're talking about higher end type of shirts. And that's what most people who are looking at our equipment are looking to produce. They're not looking to mass produce 10,000 shirts at a time for $4 a piece. They're looking to do orders of 50 or 100 shirts that might be $20 a piece.
Okay.
Just saying that too. let's say you're going to make $10 a shirt, because you're going to, and we don't have to get into the numbers of what you're selling it for, but just for fun, we'll say all your business costs, the t-shirt, the ink, the running the business, the accountant, the electricity, all that stuff costs you $10 a shirt.
Okay.
And then you charge 20. So you've got 10 you put in the bank. That's the simple math we're going to do. Yep. If you sell 200 shirts a month, you make $2,000 a month, right? 200 times 10, you just add an extra zero for the
right,
whatever word you would use to be afraid of math people. Times 10, you add a zero at the end. So 2,000 shirts a month. $2,000 a month. That means your machine is paid back in 5 months, right? So 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000.
So I just want to stop and say something remarkable here.
Sure.
$10 a shirt in profit is not a stretch.
Yeah, no,
right?
No.
Selling 200 shirts a month, it's 10 orders of 20 shirts. It's 50 shirts a week. It's not a lot of shirts. So we're talking about paying off a commercial t-shirt printer in 5 months, not doing a lot of shirts, not spending a lot of money. It's a remarkable ROI. Talk to somebody who's buying a Subway franchise.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. And also, this is if you're doing like 10 shirts in an hour. I'm just going to do all zero numbers just so that is easy. But if you're doing 10 shirts in an hour, 200 shirts, we're going the opposite way. So we take a zero off, is 20 hours. That's 5 hours a week. If you're saying your side gig, if this is a side gig thing and you're looking to do 10 hours a week is what you want to put into your side gig, you got 5 hours to do the business stuff and sales and talk to customers, 5 hours to do production. There's your 10 hours a week, and that's $2,000 a month.
Yep.
That's a side gig that a lot of folks are doing in this business. So going further with the math, if you're selling 500 shirts a month, you're paying it back in 2 months.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how you're kind of doing some of this math on what this return on investment is. And we'll extrapolate on this further.
But the sentence that you can say at this point is that, if you're doing your back of the napkin business plan, and you're saying that I'm going to spend $10,000 on this piece of equipment, I'm going to invest in it, and I think I can sell 200 shirts a month at a minimum. My ROI is 5 months. I will have this paid off and, paid back in 5 months. If you're talking to an investor, that's a pretty strong statement. That after 5 months, I'm going to take your $10,000 and now we'll be in profit mode. Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I find all this stuff to be pretty interesting because you can play with all of these numbers.
Yep.
Right. And you can get deep into the math and you just start, writing them down. Well, what I'm looking at it, I think I could sell my shirts for more. I can sell them for 15. What does that math look like? Well, I'm not trying to work that many hours. I want to work much less. What if I only put 8 hours into it? How many there's a lot of math. There's a lot of fun math you can do once you get used to it. So now let's talk about financing, I think, unless there's anything else you want to cover there.
Well, I do like you made a little note here about life expectancy of the printer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I apologize.
I think that's good
You're right.
To talk about at this point because, your equipment is not going to last forever, right? It just won't. This laser printer I have back in the corner, I think it was made in like 1978 or something like that. I print with it 5 pages a month, maybe on average. You're buying a commercial piece of equipment that you're going to use all the time. If it's an embroidery machine, it's going to be running for days or hours, every week. It will last for a long honking time, but it won't last forever. You should plan on it becoming obsolete in X number of years so you can work that out in the long-term math for your business, right? So you've got a great life expectancy of a printer is about 5 years.
Yeah, that's great. And we're going to, after we talk about financing too, we'll kind of jump into some other ROI stuff where we'll talk about that long-term number at the end. and how long you expect it to live. So we can talk about how much money will I make over time. So right now we talked about a quick ROI, meaning
Right.
how I invested this much money, how soon till I get that money back in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we'll talk about financing, which is going to be I'm going to make this many. This is my payment. How much work? How much do I have to sell to be able to make my payment for me, where it's
Yeah.
break even,
Yeah.
right? Because a payment of $300 costs you $300 out of your pocket every month until that equipment is making you money. And you have $300 that the equipment made you, right? Now you're at break even and so on. And then we'll talk about the life of your printer. So that ROI over time, how much did it make you total in the end? And then that becomes a case for reinvesting in a new one, and things
Decision making.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like that. So financing ROI is cash flow, and that's my favorite thing. I love cash. I like to keep it. So like if I start a business, I'd be less likely to write somebody a check for the pizza oven if I'm starting a pizza business. I'd be much more likely to be the person that tries to figure out what's the best financing deal I can get so I get a low monthly payment. Because as you can see, when you look at that $10,000 purchase for a piece for a printer, then, it gets paid back in 5 months. But in that 5 months, if all you're doing with that $2,000 that you make, if that's what you make, then you're not taking any cash yourself, right? You're not taking anything back. That's putting everything back in the business. You don't have to do that, of course. You can extend it out. But if you finance it, then it's really reasonable. I mean, Mark Vila's got an estimated payment here at around $300 a month, which is super high, but it's easy to figure because you figure right now you could probably get a $10,000 piece of equipment for around $240. Okay, so at $300 a month, now you're not dealing with that $10,000 that you're looking for necessarily as your return on investment. You're dealing with that on a monthly basis. So what's my monthly ROI? What's my monthly cash flow? That's when the financing people are flipping out a little bit because it's not ROI, it's positive cash flow. So when I think personally about ROI, I'm thinking about I'm spending this much a month and I'm bringing in this much a month. Number two has got to be higher than number one. And if you're doing $300 a month in an equipment payment, what was the math you used? You're making $10 a shirt, right? So that means your break even is at 30 shirts every month. So now, if you are selling those 200 shirts, you've got 170 shirts that you get to keep that $10 a month. I mean, that $10 a shirt. So you're putting $1,300 in your pocket right away. Selling the same number of shirts, using the same piece of equipment, selling the same customers. It's just a different way to use the money. Now, the number won't look as good in the end because you're paying interest on that loan, potentially. But, if you are, the way I think about the finance ROI too is if you only have $10,000 in the bank and you want to buy a $10,000 piece of equipment to start your business, is it really a good move? And this is up to you. Is it really a good move to empty that account and invest in that equipment and not have enough money left over for a bad month or something happens to at your office, or you get sick and you can't work, or you don't have that cash buffer?
Yeah. That makes a lot of that makes a lot of sense. And there's the concept of looking at the interest that you're going to pay over time, because you see that, and especially if you're new to doing this for business, you will look at that because you're used to looking at that for your car loan and your home loan. Like, gosh, this car, I'm going to buy this $30,000 car. It's going to cost me 50 grand. in the end, right? And that's how folks will look at a piece of equipment. Oh, I can't believe this $10,000 equipment is going to cost me $15,000 with interest. But you make a good point. That it's the risk and reward. But really, and this was something that was a conversation that we would have a lot with folks when I was in equipment sales, because I'd have folks that would decide to not do it because of the interest it's going to cost. Right. And that's when this kind of math here comes up is the payments $300 a month, like we said, just doing easy numbers. You sell 100 shirts a month at $10 a shirt. Means you make $1,000 a month. You have a $300 payment. You've netted $700 a month, right? If this is your dream and this is what you want to do, I mean, I don't know. You get over the fact that the bank profited off of that.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, the interest. I'm not going to say the interest doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because it's important, but how many months do you have to not start that business before you make up for that? So in other words, if I'm going to make $1,000 next month before I financed it, and at the end of the lease, it's going to cost me an extra $5,000 for a $10,000 piece of equipment, then in 5 months, I'm already in a better space, because you're not going to do anything next month. You're going to decide not to do anything because there's a less than attractive interest rate on the equipment. And okay, that you're not going to make $700 next month. And then the following month, you're not going to make $1,000 because your business would have gotten better. And the following month, so it really is this, it's not an easy decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. But if you do this math and you consider it, that's where it becomes easier to know what's right for you. And by the way, all these numbers we're making up it's all fictional stuff.
Yeah.
There's 0% interest finance out there. We have folks that do stuff on a credit card that's 1% or 0% for years. I mean, there's leasing. There's tons of stuff. We're just using numbers just to visualize rather than just abstract.
And say Mark Stevenson said it was going to be 15%.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if we say that, if we're going back to the example, just wrap this up, is a $300 payment. If you sell, we already said, if you're making $10 a shirt, you need to sell 30 shirts to be able to make your payment without going negative at all, which is wonderful. That's then if you sell 100 shirts a month, that $10 a shirt, that's $1,000 a month that you bring in net. Net before your payment, right? Because we've already said that like the $10 is after the cost of the shirt, the cost of running the business, all that stuff. So you've made $1,000 a month. After your payment, that's 300. You now have officially netted 700 because we're siloing out this payment as an expense just for conversation. So $700 a month. If you stayed flat at that number and never sold more than 100, that's about $8,000 or $9,000 a year running a machine for a couple days a month, because that's how long it would take to make 100 shirts.
Yeah. So if you were in the internet marketing business, you'd say that the machine's not costing you anything.
Yeah.
It's paying for itself and handing you $700. So that's another way to look at it. But but you can see the difference, right? You can see the difference. Imagine you're sitting down in front of somebody that you're talking about starting your business and you want them to invest, or you're just explaining the numbers to make sure that you've got a good idea and everything works. You've got two choices. I can either take the 10 grand that you're going to give me, and here's what the ROI is like, the payback is like, or I'm going to finance this 10 grand and here's what my monthly cash flow is like. Pros and cons to each one.
So then we can go into kind of a net return type of a thing, right? So a net return on investment, this isn't super technical. Again, this is just layman, is how much money you're going to basically make when the whole thing is done. That's what we're going to return. And finance folks will talk about this with like in making some long-term investments and stuff like that, and that's kind of what we're referring to it as that. So you buy a $10,000 machine and you're selling 1,000 shirts a month at $20 a piece. So you're making $20,000 a month. After 5 years, it's over $1 million in revenue. Right.
Yeah.
So this $10,000 investment over the 5-year life created you $1 million in revenue for your business.
Yep.
And that's how big, especially big businesses and small businesses alike are looking at something. We don't have an e-commerce store. We think we're missing out on $10,000 a month in sales if we start up an online store. The online store is going to cost us $20,000 to make, but we're going to make 5,000. And that store, before we have to rebuild it again, is going to be good for 5 years. That means, all of this money is going to be made by spending this little bit amount of money or a lot amount of money now, seemingly. So, or were you going to say something?
Yeah. So here's what I like about this. I like something about every way of looking at this idea. And in my personal business life, I look at it in every one of these ways. It's a good way to check your decisions. But what I really like about it is it gives you it highlights the difference between the people that start and the people that never get started. We see a lot of comments, especially on the embroidery machine and the digital heat effects, people just getting started. They'll say, wow, that $300, that's like a car payment. I could buy another car for that. Yeah, but you're going to add up what you spend on that car over 5 years, and you're going to add up what you make with this printer over 5 years, and the difference is going to be $1 million. This is really kind of the reality of the situation. And so if you've got these net return numbers and you have the wherewithal to look at what your business might be like after 5 years, then you get a much better perspective on, oh man, that paper's expensive. How much does it cost to replace the white toner? I need a reciprocator. I've got to have somebody come out to my business and help reset up my embroidery machine because I dropped it off the back of the truck. These things take on a different perspective if you have all of these numbers written down and like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's hard now and that sucks, but my net return after 5 years, if I keep this up, is this.
Yeah.
And you should be excited by that no matter where you are in the process.
Yeah, no, there's something that you mentioned. There's kind of the big picture thinking versus small picture thinking. So how much does it cost for ink or toner to buy like a set or something like that, or a box of paper or whatever it might be, is a reasonable and valuable question to know. You should know all of that. But it's much less important to know how much does it cost to replace an ink cartridge than it is to know how much does it cost me to make each garment, each piece, each mug.
Yes.
That's much more important to know because that's going to be a lifetime thing. If you are charging the right amount of money and doing your math correctly because you know how much it costs to make, then you're going to know how profitable you'll be. And when it comes time to replace those things like ink or something like that, you've earned the money to do it because you've been charging enough per garment to add up for that cost, whatever it might be.
And I'd say it's tough because it is a change in thinking. So we have this kind of frustrating conversation with people all the time where it's digital heat effects in particular. Let's say that a sheet of A and B is $3.50 or $4. Let's say it's $4. Let's say it costs you $4 for an 11 by 17 sheet. And people think that's expensive. That's very expensive. And they may not make a decision because of that. They may decide against it because of that. But if you'll notice, we didn't qualify that $10 profit in the t-shirt when you sell it. It's $10 a shirt. It may be 11, it may be 15, it could be 9, but most of the time it's $10 a shirt. That includes whatever you're spending to make the shirt. So why does what you're spending to make the shirt matter if the numbers work at $10 a shirt? Because there's always a trade-off. Where you mentioned, Mark, embroidery a few times. It may cost you almost nothing for thread and backing, but it may cost you 15 minutes to make a polo. Where, with digital heat effects, it may cost you, $3.50, $4 or something for the A and B paper, but it takes you 5 minutes to make a shirt. It's just this wide range of things that go into making the point of this is how much I'm going to profit. If I spend, let's say I told you that you could make $1,000 on a transaction. You could sell a shirt to me for $1,000, but you'd have to spend $500 to make it. Would you take that deal? If your answer is no, you should probably not get into the business. Because I just said that you're going to make $500, but all you can think about is that you're going to have to spend this money to get it. And I think that's a fundamental difference in the way business people think versus regular consumers that just have a job. And it shows up where it should. If you are thinking that way, don't give up. Listen to this again, look at the notes, and see if you can't convince yourself by actually reading the math on these things that spending money to make money is good.
All right, I'm on board.
Sorry, I think I got a little big picture there.
We did, and you mentioned something I think is just worthy of commenting on. It's a little bit off of this net return number we're going to talk about, but it does have to do with it. Is costing $4 to make a shirt versus 50 cents to make a shirt versus pennies to make a shirt. These are all very, very relative things depending on what's being delivered. So if you wanted to do a left chest logo like I'm wearing on this, right? How much was this with the DTF printer? Do you remember?
Gosh, I think it's like 4 cents a square inch.
Oh, okay, so like a nickel.
50 cents.
Yeah. Okay. On a digital heat effects, for example, I did some math on this recently, but if you could put if we're saying it costs like $5 to print a sheet of paper, I'm just doing a high estimate number, and you can get 25 of these on the shirt. It's 5 divided by 25. That's 20 cents to make.
Yes.
Right. So the DTF one is probably closer to a quarter of that. Right. So it's 25% of the cost to produce it with one technology versus the other. Right. Flip that. If my business is on demand printing medium to small quantity, I'm not going to go to our DTF printer to make one.
Exactly.
Sure.
Good point.
Right. Like it's a little bit of a thing. It's a process because you're doing production. And with a digital heat effect style printer, if you just want to make one shirt for one customer, 5 minutes, you're done. With the DTF, you might be setting up for 5 minutes just to get it running. And
at least eight minutes before it makes its first print.
Okay. So 8 minutes, right? So there's a difference in that right now.
Yeah.
So depending on the business and what you're doing, some things make more sense than others. Right. So that is part of this equation when you're considering all this math, and we're going to get into some comparisons, I think, after this.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I'm going to do some, I'm going to digress back to the net return. Right. Cool. So I did some quick math up here. Right. You bought a $10,000 machine, and you're on average, you're selling 1,000 shirts a month at $20 a piece. Right. Yeah. So if that printer's going to last you 5 years, You do that math across it, that $10,000 printer has earned you $1.2 million in revenue gross before you take out any costs, right? So now this has happened, right? So now we're looking at like the machine is you're going to retire that machine today. So you're going to do the math on what's happened over the past 5 years. So you have your big number on top, 1.2 million. You take out the cost of your machine, 10 grand. All right. Now you're going to take out the cost of, because we didn't talk about profit. We talked about gross. Just it gave you $1 million ended up in your bank.
Different conversation than what we had before.
Yes, correct. Just as how much money is literally got put in the bank. When you look at deposits only, right? Not withdrawals. Now we'll start taking out some withdrawals, right? So you withdraw the 10 grand. You withdraw $600,000 in shirts and supplies. And I did that math at $10.
So the only thing that I would change there is the cost of the printer that you paid, the 10 grand, or whatever the sum of your financing was.
Yes. Okay, good. Good point. So yes, if it was that 15,000 before that you said, then it would be 15,000, right? If you bought it with cash, it'd be 10,000 even. If you did whatever it might be, 0%, you might be 10,000 even too. Now we have $10 a shirt in cost because we have, and for the sake of our math, we're doing 10,000 cost, $10 cost, $10 profit, $20 shirt, just to be clear, just to make the math simple to stay out loud. So you have $600,000 in supplies. That's ink, transfer belts, paper, t-shirts, whatever, all your supplies. Then I just said $5,000 in business fees. Okay. Right. I just mean just stuff. You pay a tax guy a couple $100 a year. You pay the state $100 a year, whatever it is. I said like $1,000 a year in fees, just to give some room. And then you're also, maybe there's some other business fees you didn't factor in, like credit card costs, right? So you do that too, right? You have at maybe like 30 grand to the credit card for that $1.2 million. Okay. Visa's cashing in, right?
Yeah.
Side note. So and then you could have other things that you pull out of this, right? If you have one piece of equipment, it's kind of easy because everything relies on this one piece of equipment. If you have multiple, it gets complicated. But in the end, the 1.2 minus everything I just mentioned ended up about $550,000 profit over 5 years. So with this math, simple math, you're doing over $100,000 a year in profit for this business based on that $10,000 piece of equipment that you're investing in, that you invested in. So this quickly becomes a case that it's clear I replaced this printer.
Yes. Because
I want to do that $100,000 a year again. Continue with that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you can look at all of your different pieces of equipment over time, is you kind of do some of this math for each of them. And if you have 5 pieces of equipment, you can start looking at, well, the Spangle machine is my best net return by itself, meaning like of percentage wise, but my DTG machine is the one that brings in the most cash. Yeah. So, and then you could determine, well, I'd probably want to invest in a second DTG machine so I can up that production. The margin is not as good. The percentages are not as good, but I'm bringing in the most cash. Conversely, you could say I should just get another Pro Spangle machine because the investment's just simple.
Yeah.
It's just, I know I can produce more, I can make more, I can sell more, and that's got a super fast ROI. And the net in the end is huge for the investment. And this is part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, I love that.
So now that we've looked at 3 things now. One is just like you wired someone money, how quick till you get that money back, and then your bank account grows, right? Yeah. Then we looked at the financing ROI. You didn't wire money, you borrowed money, and you have to pay it back at X amount of dollars a month. So every time you sell more than 30 shirts, 20 shirts, whatever the number is, that's money that is for your business towards your profit.
Kind of a cash flow.
Cash flow. That's right. And then we had the net at the end. This is what happened at the end. I spent this much on machine. I spent this much on this. In the end, this is how much that one piece of equipment has earned my business.
Yeah. And that's the ideal situation if you have the benefit of hindsight and
Yeah.
a complete investment cycle of 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm excited about is what I'm reading here on the notes and figuring out a simple ROI in advance to kind of figure out what's the best investment for you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a challenge because somebody may be, I'm thinking about getting a sublimation printer and I'm going to spend a couple $1,000s with everything. Or I'm also thinking about getting a transfer printer that's going to be 10,000. And I'm also thinking about a DTG printer that's going to be 15, 20,000.
Yep.
And so this is where you could do all of this math to help you decide what's best for your business. And you go up above. But one of the things you consider as part of the math is, how many shirts do I have to sell and the payment and all that stuff. But the next one is really the net one. In this future that doesn't exist yet, how much is it going to cost me for this equipment? How much do I think I could sell shirts for? How long do I think it's going to last? How many shirts do I think I'm going to sell? And then in the end, I'm going to make some sort of prediction that this printer or embroidery machine or whatever it is going to give me a net number of $500,000.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things to insert in here, because you're going to go through some different examples, is that there is more than just these numbers to figure out what the best printer or best device is to power a customization business. There's a lot more than just these numbers.
Yeah.
There's what do you like? What are you going to enjoy doing? What kind of stuff do you anticipate selling? How are you with maintenance? What is your, how good are you with software? So a lot of stuff, there's a lot of things that influence in the end, the decision that you make once you already know these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I'll say it.
Yes. And the other thing is you touched on it in there, but is your niche market too. If your niche market is you are a lot of people into motorcycles, right? So you have like street racers and you have cruisers and you have, clubs, and stuff like that. You're going to find that market is going to like certain products versus if your niche is kind of cheerleading and dance and ice skating and stuff like that. That's a different market. They want different things. So that's a part of it too.
I think that's a great example because you mentioned sublimation printing, which I think is amazing. Especially for, let's say, $2,500, $3,500. I can't think of anything that you could sell a motorcycle club. That is going to be like they don't wear light colored polyester shirts often. But if you were doing, maybe team sports, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
So I want to start my business. I want to serve motorcycle clubs. I want to serve, some kind of specific business employees. This is my market. This is what I love. These are the designs I like. That is going to help you pick which pieces of equipment that you can choose from.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make the products that you want to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. And this also will give us some of that value of money over time and things like that based on what you know. So this is one of those things where if someone asks, and we've said it, we're guilty of it. What's the most profitable machine? And there are answers to that are real, but also, there's always depends, right?
Yeah.
There's always a depends, but I figure we'd talk about a couple examples quickly. Sure. So one is, I didn't think of a niche market for these, but I think maybe it will help for visualization since it was brought up. So maybe in this first example, you're kind of selling to, I'm going to say, like local business local party events. You're just doing a lot of local stuff, and it's fairly diverse.
Okay.
Like your niche is like, I'm the person here that can make shirts for the town.
You're the West Chase
Yeah.
custom business.
Yeah, you're just within the area. You're the closest one within X amount of miles. So people are going to come to you for parties, for events. They're opening up a restaurant. You're fairly diverse.
Right.
So you're trying to decide, do I want to get an embroidery machine or a DTG printer?
Okay.
Very different,
Yes.
but they both can produce for this set of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is this one person's example. This isn't everybody's. This is just literally
Right.
one business. So the cost of the equipment's $10,000 for the embroidery machine. They've done the math and they think they can make $15 a piece. Probably mostly doing hats, right? And they think this machine's going to last them a decade. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, all sounds right.
Okay. And based on how much they're going to work, how much they think they can sell, the availability of the market, based on just kind of some you have to do some educated guessing. They're going to do 4 pieces an hour, 4 hours a day, 20 days a month for a decade on this machine. So they're going to sell 40,000 hats over 10 years, right? So we'd take that math, $15 a hat times 40,000 units over the decade, $600,000 or $60,000 a year.
Okay.
And then the machine's retired. And that's assuming a lot of flatness in this, but
I mean, and I just want to highlight that's 4 pieces an hour is a reasonable production rate for a single head embroidery machine.
And for a hat. Yeah, I think so.
So when you think about this, how many pieces an hour are you going to produce, how much you're going to make per piece, the technology influences what your productivity can be.
Yeah. And I say, like, for this, they kind of feel like producing 16 pieces a day is kind of what they feel they're going to be able to sell. Right. Okay. I think, and I'm going to work 5 days a week. So I'm going to sell, I have too much, 80 units a week. Right. Okay. I think I'm going to sell 80 hats a week to this market. It seems reasonable to me between the businesses and this, that, and the other. I'm also going to do polos. I'm going to say the math is the same. So that's one investment they can make. Okay. Now, the second investment is they're looking at the DTG potentially. Now, the equipment cost is 15, more money. Right. We're going to say they could still make $15 a piece. Okay. Right. For this case, because they're going to sell good quality shirts, higher end, and they know this market has some money to spend on that. Now, the estimated life of a printer, we're going to say, is like 5 years.
Right.
Right.
Because it's a digital printer.
Yeah.
Uses liquid inks, in most electronics, if you look around your house, you look at your phone, look at your computer, they're rarely over 5 years old.
Yes, that's just true in general. You're right. Computer, anything electronic in your house is unless it's super simple electronics, right? Yep. So 5 years. So now at first one might say, it costs more, it lasts less. I hope I said that right.
Nope, that's like, close enough.
Why would I want to do that? Right. Well, now we do the math, right? Now this can produce faster. So now they're going to say I can do 12 pieces an hour. Also, people burn through shirts faster than they're going to burn through polos and hats because t-shirts don't last as long. So I'm going to sell more, right? So now I'm going to do 12 pieces an hour. I'm still going to work 4 hours a day and I'm still going to work 20 days a month for 5 years, right? That's 55,000 total units. $15 profit.
I just want to make sure you've got different numbers in your. Oh, I was in the wrong section. I see.
Okay.
Got DTG down there twice.
We do have notes on this. I wrote all this down. So the 55, that's what Mark's looking at. So 55,000 units times $15 is 825,000 that you have made over 5 years. So now this is 165,000 per year.
Yeah.
So in this case, this business owner might be looking at these two things and say, gosh, that printer, it's a bit more money. And I know that I'm going to replace it sooner, but the net the net return I'm going to get is significantly better in the short term and the long term.
Yeah. And I love the way that it forces you to look at the difference in price of the equipment.
Yeah.
Because, do the $10,000 and $15,000 seem significant when you look at the ROI on, when you look at the net ROI over 5 years at all? No.
Yeah.
It doesn't look, I mean, if you're going to make $165,000 a year, does the extra $5,000 or $10,000 you spend in the beginning matter? No. It doesn't. So this is just a brilliant way to look at it.
After a handful of months, it didn't matter anymore, because then the percentage becomes so small, right? But it is important to look at this stuff. Now, Mark, you mentioned some great stuff. DTG sounds terrible to you. You're not interested in it, for whatever reasons. And you look at the embroidery numbers and you can still say, listen, that's a nice profitable thing. Maybe I can just get 2 machines, know, or maybe I'll have something else on the side to bring in some more money, because again, you might have a goal of making $150,000 a year,
Yeah.
So then you look at the embroidery machine, you say, okay, here's 60 of it, 90 more, okay, I'll just get 3 machines, right?
That's a great way to look at it. And you could also hedge your bets and get one embroidery machine and maybe the smallest digital heat effects printer, or do a combo and add things up that way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely this can get really complicated and interesting, but if you sit down and you focus on it and think about it over time, the decisions jump out at you. I think, in my personal opinion, with everything I do.
I feel like there's a group of people, though they probably didn't make it to the end of this podcast, that that feel like there's some sleight of hand going on because the numbers look so good.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to sell you anything in particular. Right. We're trying to get you to take an objective look at the numbers in the business in the simplest way possible.
And the other thing is when I went back and I did this math like 4 times.
Yeah.
Because and that's where I said, I'm going to work 20 days a month. I'm off on weekends.
Yeah.
I'm doing production 4 hours a day, which means half of my 8-hour workday is doing other things besides production. And by the way, we've done other stuff. When your embroidery machine is running, you can do other things.
Yes.
So I've really tried to now, yes, you do have to sell this, but you've got 4 hours a day to sell, Right. So, we've tried to do our best to make it real. And some of these numbers are way low for some people, and some of these numbers are going to be way high for others. We're just trying to help you learn what to do, but all this stuff is not unrealistic. And especially when I come to ColDesi a few weeks ago, and there was a guy stopping by looking at a piece of equipment in his Porsche.
Yeah. Right.
So who was looking at, I think he was looking at a G4 DTG.
Sure.
So I think he's doing pretty good selling t-shirts.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I think we want to do just one more separate example just to kind of show some converse. I'll go through it a little faster, if you don't mind. So this separate example is going to be, I mentioned a motorcycle type of a person that they have an in with some clubs, or they've known people, they've been riding for 20 years and they know a lot of people. So this is their niche. Their embroidery is different. They are going to do long production things. They might only be doing 4 things a day, right? Because they're doing big jacket backs, complicated designs, bags, stuff like that. But they're profiting $100 a piece.
Yep.
Per, right? So saying that over 10 years, they're going to do like 12,000 pieces over 10 years. Conversely to what we say before, 40,000. So they're doing a lot less, but the profit's much larger on each, right? So this person, $100 profit a piece because they're doing things that cost a few $100 to buy. And they're going to do 12,000 units over a decade, a little over 1,000 a year. So they're making 1.2 million or $120,000 a year on their embroidery machine. They do very high-end embroidery. We just spoke to somebody earlier today, Mark and I, that they work for a company that sells rugs that cost over $10,000 a piece.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if you, so just, we can back up that it's not unreasonable to have, somebody would pay something that's $100 profit for embroidery.
No, I mean, we have customers that sell specifically leather motorcycle jackets and other things. I'm thinking about I wish I could remember the business. He does Buffalo Soldiers.
Uh-huh.
He's one of our success stories that sells jackets for hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, and there's a market for it. So, but that's this person. We're talking about this person, not that this is your business or this could be your business. This is this person deciding what equipment to buy. Then they look at a DTG printer, right? Same thing, costs 15,000 instead of 10. But for t-shirts and that crew, they're not really interested in expensive shirts. They're not interested in anything that fashionable. They want a nice, simple cotton t-shirt. $10 profit a piece is all they think they're going to get out of it. They're not going to get as much as the other guy who was selling locally in a higher income neighborhood where he's going to make 15 a piece. The life of that equipment's the same, 5 years, but they only really think they're going to sell about 8 pieces an hour, 4 hours a day, same as before, but they can't sell as many as the other person, just because of the volume of the amount of customers they have, the potential volume, the work and wear through this apparel. They're going to produce and sell less. So they're going to do $10 profit at 40,000 units over 5 years. That's $80,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their market and what they can sell for and how much they think they can sell. In this case, it's fairly clear that the investment for them in the embroidery machine is a significantly better investment, 3 times better.
Yes. Agreed.
So they would go with embroidery because they have a particular niche that they could sell high end to. And then, I mean, the last bit that we kind of said before is your example might be both is the right answer.
Yes.
Your example is an embroidery machine and a $5,000 printer, or a DTG printer and sublimation as well. You know, you determine what math works out right for you.
But even with these two, with the embroidery and the DTG, and you're in the high end leather jacket and less expensive custom t-shirt business, then with both machines, you're doing 200 grand a year, and you're spending maybe $25,000-$30,000 on the equipment. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's a pretty compelling story to tell.
Yeah, this is what a lot of business is, really. Yeah. A restaurant you mentioned earlier, I think, a Subway you mentioned. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. At a Subway, besides the actual building, they do have to invest in like a nice oven to bake the bread, and stuff like that, I assume, which is reasonably expensive. But gosh, a Subway sells so many sandwiches.
Yeah,
with that one oven. But I don't know how or why. That's a separate question.
Well, and the other thing I'll say about this particular combination that you brought up, because it is a good example, is embroidery. You're making 4 pieces a day, and it takes a lot of time to make each one of those pieces, where the embroidery machine is doing all the work. So it's not like you're spending twice the time. You're not adding the time that you are embroidering to the time that you are printing with DTG. You're printing the shirts, whether it's DTG or sublimation or whatever, you're making those shirts while the embroidery machine is also working. So you could be working just about the same amount of time per day, or you could be at work the same amount of time per day, and you've bumped up your income for 200 grand because you decided to do 2 things.
Yeah, we just did a kind of a case study with some ice skating stuff that we produced.
Oh yeah, that was great.
And it came out great. And the jackets took an hour and a half each to make. They were long.
Jackets.
They were embroidery.
Beautiful embroidery.
Beautiful embroidery. And in the time we did the jackets, while the machine was running, I mean, this took place over, I don't know, like a day and a half of work days.
Yeah.
The embroidery machine was running, answering emails, writing podcast episode.
Right.
We sublimated some keychains and some headbands. The embroidery machine's running.
Yeah.
We ran a Pro Spangle machine and put transfers on t-shirts.
Right. I forgot that.
And
Nice.
the embroidery machine is running.
Yeah.
And what else did we make? We made stickers on a Roland BN20.
Right.
We printed stickers. Embroidery machine is running, and I don't remember if there was something else. I forget now. But we did all that. The embroidery machine was going, and all these things were being produced while I'm conducting business.
Now you said all those things could have been done just by one person.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much did it alone.
Yeah.
But I have to shout out to Hannah and Jess. If you've watched ColDesi videos, you've definitely seen both of them. They definitely helped out with all of this away. But really they helped because we were shooting video. And so we all participated to help out to make sure the video was done. But realistically, all that would have been done by me in a couple days. And I think we talked to Scott and a few other folks around in the business who have been in this industry a long time. And they're like, this is a $2,500 to $3,000 order easily for it to be produced, all this stuff. Right. And it was stuff we did in a couple days. So it kind of goes back to that ROI to say that it would have cost us this much. We would have profited in a couple days. We would have profited about $1,500 in theory or something like that. I don't remember the number.
I like it. Listen, I think that I'm going to say my piece and then let you wrap up.
Yeah, well, yeah, wrap it up.
I think that this is so important for you guys to do, to at least give some thought as you're considering, getting into the business and what equipment you're going to buy, and or you're considering adding a piece of equipment, is take this kind of realistic look at whether or not you should invest your cash in it, whether or not you should finance, what the ROI looks like, the value of supplies versus the total amount of money that you're going to make, the how to value your time when you're talking about this technology and the amount of money it's going to make. The phrase ROI, return on investment, has a lot of different practical applications. And I think the things that we've talked about here will give you a really good leg up on having a successful business if you understand them.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think that was great. I'll say if you go to customapparelstartups.com and you go to podcast and you find this episode, in the notes, we'll have all the math that we did. And the purpose of this math is not what you are going to do or anything like that. The purpose of this is to help you get into this thought process and to get you thinking about it with us virtually, and then think about it on your own. And the reason why our numbers are fairly simple is I do e-commerce stuff with our Coleman and Company store and other things like that. And numbers are a rabbit hole. Forever. They're forever a deep rabbit hole, and you can make any number sound like almost anything when you really dive deep into them. But the important thing is to start thinking this way, start doing some math, and you do have to guess a bit, right? Yeah. And you've got to estimate, you guesstimate, predict. You can't predict everything in the future, but you kind of do some of that basic math and you say, what can I sell a shirt for in this area, or in this niche? What does it sell for? How much does it cost to make? All right, there's a basic number. I get that there's some electricity costs. Do I really think that's a crazy number? Probably not. I'm not going to do it for the sake of this simple math. Right. What is it to register with the state? I mentioned, it's like $100 a year. These aren't massive things for me doing nice and simple math. You do some basic math and you begin to have an understanding. And then you say, okay, am I going to make $500,000? Maybe. Make 300,000. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with that. That's way less. I make $1 million. I don't know, maybe, but you kind of get in this range. And then once you're there, then you start to be able to look at, am I not going to do this, or am I going to do it? Am I going to invest in one or the other or both? And then you get to actually make a decision that's not based on impulse or fear. Fear is the number one killer. Yeah. Number one killer is fear. This reduces your fear because you have a nice, comfortable feeling. And it also helps you to not jump ahead of yourself and make a poor decision, because some people will say, I couldn't make any money with an embroidery machine. And then it's like, well, in your niche, you maybe should have invested in something else that would have been a little bit easier for you to be successful in.
Yeah.
Change your niche now because you own an embroidery machine.
Or it was you and not the niche.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was going to not insult.
It's you. It's not me. It's you.
No, it's
All
true.
right, listen,
It's true. Great. Thank you, Mark. This is great.
This has been Mark Stevenson
and Mark Vila from ColDesi.
You guys have a great, well figured out ROI kind of a business.
Thanks.